The first time you come to do a region embossing, you'll need to start by selecting a pattern that you would like to use. In this example, I am using a crown design from the built-in patterns. Next, you'll tap on the region embossing icon, and then we need to create a template. Now this is going through the initial setting. This is my first time doing this, so therefore there are some additional steps that you won't need to go through every single time. The first of these is to attach the adjustment sheet to a low tack or middle tack mat and then load that into your machine. Once you've done that, the machine is going to perform a test cut. I'll go through that process now. When you have the sheet loaded, you'll need to load your standard blade on a setting of 3.5. Check the machine's screen for any additional settings, including pressure. There was none given, so I'm going for a standard 0. Press start and a test cut will be performed. The machine will then ask if that test cut has performed accurately and correctly. In my case it has, as you can see here. If it hasn't, it does give you the option to perform a second test cut. Because mine was okay, I move on. It will now give me further instructions about what's going to happen next. In short, the machine will perform a series of cuts, after which your next goal will be to match a little red dot to the intersection of some of those cuts. Here is a closer look at that screen so you can see what I'm referencing. The next task will be to fold over the emboss template position adjustment sheet that's just been cut and reference this against the numbers that are available on that sheet. Here's a closer look at what that looks like. In my case, the number was 0, so I can simply click OK. You may need to make a small adjustment though before you move on. Those were the setup steps. Now I'm moving on to creating the template for real. So I do that by tapping on Create Template. I'm then given on-screen instructions for how to position things. The first thing is to position the thing that I'm going to emboss in the top left corner of the mat, and that will then be scanned through the system. Now I need to isolate that object using the little drag arrows at either corner. Then I need to position my design in the center, or roughly the center, of the thing that I'm going to emboss, in this case the cardstock. If you need them, you have access to your alignment tools directly from that screen. Once you're happy, tap OK and then once again. And you'll now be asked to unload the mat and remove the cardstock. Tapping Next shows us the design that's going to be cut, and then we are asked to load a template sheet onto our cutting mat. Once the template sheet is on the mat, we load that into the machine. When we tap Next, we are then asked to lay out the template sheet within the cutting area. If we need to, we can scan a preview of this using the preview function. Once we tap OK here, we are brought to the end screen, which is basically where we will start the actual functions of the cutting. So basically I would tap on the cut icon, and because my mat is loaded, my start stop button appears lit, and then I will start that cutting process. Because it takes a few minutes, I will shorten that here. We are then advised to unload the mat and remove the template sheet. Before doing this, click OK, because it's worth just double checking, as we do get the option to cut again. If we don't need to, we can just continue with that. And we now remove the template sheet from the cutting mat, being careful to separate the design from the remainder. Obviously keep the remainder, because we can use that again in the future. The part that I am now removing is the actual embossing sheet, or template sheet as we've been calling it. Do keep the other parts though, the waste or the cutouts, because we can use those for creative projects in the future. We will now move on to step 2. We will be asked if it's okay to delete the patterns. That's fine. And we are then asked to load the template sheet onto the mat at the bottom edge. First, fold the template sheet so that the crease or the score has been folded well. Position that fold against the bottom edge of the cutting mat, and then make sure it's stuck down well to the cutting mat itself. When you tap Next, you will be asked to load the thing that you are embossing into the embossing folder. In my case, it's the cardstock. When cutting the template, there are little notches that are cut into the template, and you will make sure that the cardstock is about 1/8 of an inch away from the fold, and that is where those notches are. When you tap Next, you will be asked to secure the cardstock to the cutting mat with some masking tape. Upon clicking Next, you will be asked to cut the scanning support sheet into a piece that's big enough to cover your template sheet. When you click Next, you will be asked to secure that over the top of the template on the cutting mat. Then you would load this into your machine. Once the mat has been loaded into the machine, click Start and the scanning will begin. Again, I have shortened this process to keep this lecture short. This is the screen that will come up though once the scanning has been completed. The next task is to again isolate that image up to the edge of the template sheet using the drag boxes that are on screen. Here's a closer look at that. You would then tap on Preview to check your results. When I went to tap OK this time around, I noticed that the recognition hadn't been successful. This was because I was using a dark cardstock with the dark template plastic. That's no problem though. I can go back and repeat the scanning process. This time though, to cheat the system, I will insert a piece of white card between the template sheet and the cardstock that I'm going to emboss. I will still attach the support sheet over the top of all of this, and then I will send it through to scan again. This time around I can already see that I have better results as I can see an outline around that crown design. Again, I will need to isolate it. And there we can see that's now a much better result. Next, I tap OK, and then I am asked if it's OK to emboss that pattern. Before I go ahead with that though, I will need to make sure that I remove the white cardstock, and the scan and cut is going to ask me to remove the support sheet and then fold open the embossing template sheet. Make sure you put the backing back onto that support sheet because we can use that again. When ready, we tap the emboss icon and we're then given instructions about the embossing tool. I'm choosing to use the 1.5mm, so I will need to change that in my embossing tool. I will then load this into the machine. Here's a closer look at that screen. Next, I will tap OK. If I need to, I can make any adjustments for pressure. However, everything was set up as before, so I simply click Start and the embossing process will begin. Once finished, we do have the option to emboss again if we need to, or we can tap on Finish Emboss. I chose to run this through one more time just to be on the safe side. When it had finished, I tapped on Finish Emboss and then I confirmed the message that pops up. And now I can unload the mat and remove the cardstock from the cutting sheet. When you turn the design over, you'll be able to see the embossed results. Quite clean, quite crisp, and really quite impressive, I would say. Now obviously this does take a few minutes to actually set up the first time you do this. However, after that it will be simply a case of creating your template sheets and then embossing things as and when you need to. Do bear in mind also that you can save these embossing designs so you don't have to recreate them each time.